Hey everyone. Welcome to AfriHeart Stories, your go-to spot for African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe and drop a comment. Now sit back and enjoy. The warm glow of the dining room light washed over the table, casting a soft amber hue on the china plates Amara had spent half the afternoon arranging. The air was scented with the rich aroma of pepper soup simmered with goat meat, jollof rice fragrant with bay leaves, and the unmistakable sweetness of her freshly baked coconut cake. Amara Johnson smoothed the folds of her emerald green evening dress and glanced at the clock. 8:05 p.m. Desmond was late, again. But tonight she didn't mind. Tonight was special. Her lips curved into a hopeful smile as she adjusted the silver candle holders. The promotion he'd been talking about for months had finally come through. She had imagined his face lighting up, his strong arms wrapping around her as he told her the good news. The sound of the front door clicking open snapped her from her thoughts. "Honey?" she called, keeping her voice light. Desmond strode in, tall, broad-shouldered, and immaculately dressed in a navy blue suit. His tie was loosened, but his face wasn't the radiant, triumphant one she expected. Instead, it was unreadable, almost cold. "You're late," she teased, stepping forward to hug him. But he didn't hug her back. He stepped past her, dropping his briefcase by the couch. "Amara, we need to talk," he said flatly. Her smile faltered. "Of course. But first." "No. Now." He turned to face her fully, his hands in his pockets. "I'm leaving you." The words slammed into her chest like a physical blow. For a moment she thought she'd misheard. "You what?" "I'm leaving," he repeated, his tone calm, almost bored. "I've been thinking about it for months. I can't keep doing this. I've met someone else, Cynthia. She's younger, fun, and she understands me." Her hands tightened on the back of a dining chair until her knuckles whitened. "Desmond, tonight of all nights? You couldn't even." "This isn't about timing, Amara. It's about me finally making the right decision for my life." He gave a small shrug. "You've held me back. I need someone who makes me feel alive again." She stared at him, her heart pounding, but her face betrayed nothing. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. He smirked, mistaking her composure for denial. "Yes. I've already made arrangements. I'll be moving in with Cynthia by the weekend." Amara's mind reeled. This was the man she'd stood by through his late nights, unpaid bills, and his 2 failed business ventures. The man she had cooked for, prayed for, and sacrificed for. And here he was, speaking of her as though she were a mistake to erase. She turned away, walking toward the table. "Then you should eat before you go," she murmured. "I'm not hungry." He grabbed his briefcase and started toward the door. Her eyes followed him, the glow of the candles flickering between them. "Desmond," she called softly. He paused, looking back. "I hope you find what you're looking for." His smirk widened. "I already have." The door closed behind him, leaving silence so heavy it seemed to press on her chest. Amara sank into a chair, staring at the carefully arranged dinner. The steam rising from the rice looked almost mocking now. She reached for her wine glass, but her hands trembled. Instead, she placed it back on the table, inhaled deeply and closed her eyes. Tears threatened, but she didn't let them fall. "No," she whispered to herself. "Not tonight. Not for him." She sat there for nearly an hour, the candles burning low, before finally standing. Slowly, deliberately, she cleared the table, one plate at a time, her movements measured, her expression unreadable. By the time she placed the last dish in the sink, a strange calm had settled over her. She wasn't going to chase him. She wasn't going to beg. If Desmond believed she'd crumble without him, he was about to learn how wrong he was. Her phone buzzed. A message from Chioma, her childhood friend. "Babe, how's the celebration? He finally got the promotion, right?" Amara stared at the words for a long moment before replying. "No. Something else happened. I'll explain tomorrow." She turned off the lights in the dining room, the scent of the untouched meal lingering in the air. As she climbed into bed that night, she didn't cry. Instead, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words over and over until they lost their sting. By morning, she knew one thing for certain: she would not be the desperate ex-wife he expected. Scene transition, next morning. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of their bedroom. Amara was already dressed in a simple cream blouse and black trousers when Desmond's key rattled in the front door. He walked in wearing a satisfied grin, as if returning to collect a prize. Behind him, Cynthia followed, slim, sharp-featured, her heels clicking on the polished floor. "Well," Cynthia said, eyeing Amara's outfit, "you're already dressed to leave." "Good." Desmond gestured toward two bulky security guards lingering by the door. We're here to make this quick. I don't want drama. Amara's gaze flicked to the pre-printed papers in his hand. What's this? Divorce settlement, he said casually. I figured I'd save you the trouble of lawyers. You get a small payout, enough to rent somewhere modest. It's fair. Fair? She let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. Yes, Cynthia cut in, smirking. Considering you contributed nothing to his success. The insult stung, but Amara didn't flinch. She walked to the wardrobe, pulled out a single suitcase and set it on the bed. You think you've won, she said quietly. But you've only freed me. Desmond's brow furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see. She zipped the suitcase shut and picked up her laptop. This is all I need. As she passed Cynthia, she caught the faintest whiff of expensive perfume and something else, arrogance. At the doorway she paused and looked back at Desmond. I won't fight you for anything. But remember this moment. Because one day you will. Without waiting for a response, she walked out, the guard stepping aside as though sensing the quiet storm in her stride. That was the night Amara's old life ended, and the quiet beginning of a new one she hadn't yet imagined. The morning air outside the guesthouse felt heavy with Lagos humidity as Amara stood by the gate, suitcase in hand. She'd left without looking back at the house that was no longer hers. She thought she'd seen the worst of it, until the next day when a pounding knock shook the door of the small room she'd rented. She opened it to find Desmond standing there in a crisp white shirt and tailored trousers, a smug smile curling his lips. Behind him stood Cynthia, draped in a champagne-colored silk dress, holding a takeaway coffee like she was on the set of a commercial. Two bulky security guards flanked them. Morning, Desmond said casually, as if this was an ordinary visit. We came to make sure you collect the rest of your things. We don't want any confusion. Amara raised a brow. Confusion? I took everything I needed last night. This isn't about what you need. It's about closing this chapter properly. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to her. Inside was a typed divorce settlement offering her a laughably small sum. You expect me to sign this? She asked, her tone icy. It's fair, Cynthia cut in, her eyes flicking over Amara's modest outfit. Considering you never really contributed financially. Amara's grip on the paper tightened, but she smiled faintly. If you're done insulting me, I'll be on my way. Desmond's smirk widened. That's the spirit. No need for drama. No, Amara said, stepping closer so her voice was low but firm. Drama is for people who care about your opinion. I don't. The guards exchanged glances as Cynthia's smirk faltered. Desmond's eyes narrowed. She walked past them, suitcase in hand, without signing a single paper. As she reached the gate, she turned. Desmond, you'll regret this. And it won't be because I begged you to come back. It'll be because one day you'll realize exactly what you threw away. She left them standing there in the bright morning light, their confidence shaken just enough for her to notice. That evening, Amara sat on the edge of the narrow guesthouse bed, staring at the muted television screen. The day had been long, too long, and the loneliness crept in like a slow tide. A knock on the door startled her. She opened it to find Chioma, her childhood friend, standing there with a paper bag in one hand and her usual wide grin. Babe. Chioma exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. You didn't think you could disappear without telling me, did you? Amara laughed softly despite herself. It's been a week. Week? Try a storm. Desmond is already parading that Cynthia girl like a trophy. Chioma walked in, placing the bag on the small table. I brought suya and malt. We're going to eat and then you're going to tell me everything. As they sat cross-legged on the bed, Amara told her everything, the dinner, the smugness, the insult. Chioma listened without interrupting, her expression growing sharper with every detail. You remember when we used to talk about starting our own fashion line? Chioma asked suddenly. Amara blinked. That was years ago. So, you've still got the sketches. I saw them when I visited last year. You've got talent, Amara. You just forgot. Amara shook her head. I can't start a business right now. I don't even know where to. Yes, you can, Chioma cut in. You don't need Desmond. You don't need anyone. You need you. The words landed like a spark in dry grass. For the first time in days, Amara felt something other than pain. She reached for her laptop. What are you doing? Chioma asked. Finding those sketches, Amara said with a small smile. If Desmond thinks I'm going to disappear quietly, he's in for a surprise. They stayed up past midnight, the bed strewn with fabric ideas, design templates, and half-eaten suya sticks. By the time they finally slept, Amara felt a plan forming. The next week, Amara secured a job at a mid-sized textile company in Surulere. The pay wasn't much, but it kept her close to fabrics, colors, and the hum of sewing machines, exactly where she wanted to be. She quickly became known for her efficiency, staying late to help tailors meet deadlines. Her boss, Mr. Okon, noticed. "You work like someone building an empire," he remarked one evening as she locked up the sample room. "Maybe I am," she replied with a faint smile. What no one knew was that after work, she returned to her guest house and spent hours sketching designs. Chioma helped her source affordable tailors in the local market, and together they began crafting a small collection. One afternoon, as she was organizing fabric swatches, she overheard two executives discussing their biggest competitor, a luxury fashion house partly owned by none other than Desmond's company. "Word is they're losing some of their edge," one said. "Too focused on corporate politics, not enough on the customers." Amara smiled to herself. She didn't believe in coincidence. The universe was clearly setting the stage. 3 months later, Amara attended a Lagos business gala as an assistant to Mr. Okon. The venue sparkled with gold drapes and crystal chandeliers, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume. As she moved between tables, clipboard in hand, she heard a familiar laugh. Her stomach tightened. Turning, she saw Desmond and Cynthia walking in, arm in arm. Cynthia was in a fitted red gown, her hair swept into an elaborate updo. Desmond looked every bit the corporate star, his smile wide for the cameras. "Amara?" His voice carried a note of surprise when he spotted her. "You're working here?" Before she could respond, Mr. Okon walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Ah, Amara. I was just telling someone you're the reason our new line is ahead of schedule. You've got an eye for quality." Desmond's smile stiffened. "That's impressive." Cynthia tilted her head, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "From housewife to assistant. Quite a career move." Amara didn't flinch. "Better than being known for who I'm dating," she said smoothly, before excusing herself to deliver documents to the event coordinator. She could feel Desmond's gaze on her all evening. And though he laughed with Cynthia, she caught the flicker of unease in his eyes. He'd expected her to be broken. Instead, she looked untouchable. The gala had left a deep imprint on Amara, not because of Desmond but because of the way people's eyes lingered on the design she'd worn that night. The fitted Ankara dress with asymmetrical sleeves had been one of her own sketches brought to life by Chioma's tailor contact. The following Monday, she made a decision. She would no longer treat her fashion ideas as a side hobby. She'd make it her life's work. Every evening after her textile company shift, she and Chioma worked in the cramped guesthouse room. Bolts of fabric leaned against the walls, half-finished garments hung on makeshift racks. The hum of the sewing machine became the soundtrack of her nights. Chioma grinned one evening as she spread a stack of neatly folded dresses on the bed. "Amara, look at these. These aren't just clothes, they're statements." "Statements don't pay the rent," Amara teased, but she couldn't hide her pride. Word began to spread in subtle ripples. A banker ordered a skirt suit for a presentation. A bride's sister commissioned a lace gown for a wedding. By the end of the month, Amara had enough orders to fund a small photo shoot. Instead of spending thousands on a fancy marketing campaign, she took the bold route, hosting a private showcase in Chioma's cousin's cafe. Only 20 guests came, but among them were 2 influencers who posted her designs without her even asking. By the end of that week, her phone was buzzing with inquiries. She wasn't just making clothes now, she was building a brand. It was a rainy Wednesday when the email arrived. Amara almost ignored it, thinking it was spam. But when she clicked, her heart skipped. Subject: Invitation to pitch, Lagos Luxury Retail Conference. The message was short and direct. "We have been following your work. We would like you to present your designs at the upcoming Lagos Luxury Retail Conference. This could be an opportunity to connect with high-end retailers and investors." Amara read it 3 times before showing Chioma. "Do you know what this means?" Chioma gasped. "This is it. This is the big stage." Amara's excitement was quickly met with a nod of anxiety. Desmond's company is one of the event sponsors. "If I go, I might have to face him again." Chioma crossed her arms. "You're not going there for him. You're going for you. And besides, imagine his face when he sees you commanding that room." The decision was made. Amara spent the next 2 weeks perfecting her designs. She focused on bold cuts, luxurious fabrics, and pieces that blended modern elegance with traditional African flair. When she finally zipped the last dress into its garment bag the night before the event, she stood back and whispered to herself, "This is the beginning. The conference hall gleamed under bright white lights, rows of mannequins dressed in luxury apparel from various brands. Amara stood at her booth, her designs displayed with careful precision. Each one a story of resilience stitched into fabric. She wore a fitted black jumpsuit with a flowing Kent print cape. Her hair was pulled into a sleek bun, gold earrings catching the light whenever she turned her head. It didn't take long before the moment came. Desmond walked in with Cynthia on his arm. They were laughing until Cynthia noticed Amara's booth. Her laughter faltered. Desmond's eyes locked on Amara. He blinked as though unsure she was real. She greeted a group of investors with the kind of poise she'd never had when she was his wife. One of the investors turned to Desmond. "Have you seen this collection? Absolutely stunning work. We're considering placing a bulk order." Cynthia scoffed loudly. She probably copied it from somewhere. Amara didn't flinch. She turned to the man and said, "Every piece here is my original design. Inspired by real stories, real women." More investors gathered, exchanging business cards with her, ignoring Cynthia's attempts to discredit her. Desmond stood there, silent, watching a reality he never imagined unfold. 2 weeks later, Amara's brand was featured in Lagos Lifestyle, one of the city's most respected fashion and culture magazines. The headline read, "From Obscurity to Opulence, Amara Johnson's Bold Entrance into Luxury Fashion." The feature showcased her designs, her backstory, and her vision for African-inspired luxury. Almost overnight, her orders tripled. She moved into a small studio space, hired 2 seamstresses, and upgraded her sewing machines. Chioma handled client relations while Amara focused on design. Meanwhile, Desmond began hearing whispers in his corporate circles. "That designer, Amara Johnson, she's really making waves." One colleague even joked, "She's the kind of partner we should be courting for collaborations." Cynthia noticed the shift. "Why does it seem like everyone is talking about her?" she asked one evening. Desmond brushed it off, but deep inside, a seed of irritation, and something uncomfortably close to regret, took root. Success had its tests, and Amara's came on a scorching Monday afternoon. She had just secured her largest single order yet. A chain of boutique stores in Abuja wanted 300 pieces for their summer collection. But a week later, her fabric shipment from Morocco was delayed at the port due to customs issues. Without that shipment, she'd miss the delivery deadline and possibly ruin her reputation before she'd even solidified it. Chioma found her sitting in the studio, head in hands. "So, what's the plan?" "I don't have one," Amara admitted. "If I can't deliver, they'll move to another designer." "Then you go get it yourself," Chioma said firmly. Amara blinked. "The shipment's in Kano. Then we go to Kano." It sounded insane, but that evening Amara booked 2 tickets. She wasn't going to let her momentum die. She would face this challenge head-on, the same way she'd faced Desmond's betrayal, by refusing to fold. The Kano sun blazed overhead as Amara and Chioma stepped off the early morning flight. The heat was dry, almost suffocating, but Amara's mind was locked on a single goal: secure her fabric no matter what. The supplier's warehouse was a sprawling, dusty compound lined with rolls of colorful fabric stacked almost to the ceiling. Inside, the manager, a tall man in a light blue kaftan, eyed them curiously. "I told your delivery agent the shipment would be released when the customs clearance is finalized," he said, adjusting his cap. "And I'm here to make sure it happens today," Amara replied calmly. Chioma leaned closer to whisper, "Are we bribing him?" Amara shook her head. "We're convincing him." She pulled out her designs and photos from recent orders. "These fabrics aren't just for clothes, they're for a major client. If I fail them, I lose everything I've built. But if you help me today, I promise you more orders. Big ones." The man studied her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "You have fire. I like that. Give me 2 hours." 2 hours later, a truck loaded with the precious fabric rolled toward the airport. By nightfall, Amara was back in Lagos, overseeing her seamstresses as they worked in shifts to meet the deadline. When the Abuja boutique received their shipment on time, they not only paid in full, they placed a second order. "You just turned a disaster into an opportunity," Chioma said, grinning. "No," Amara replied, threading her needle. "I turned doubt into respect." The news of Amara's win traveled fast. Desmond's company had been courting the Abuja boutique for months, hoping to secure them as a client. Losing them to Amara's brand stung, not just because of the money but because it was her. In the sleek glass conference room of Desmond's office, 2 colleagues whispered as he walked past. "Did you hear? That account we lost, Amara Johnson took it. The ex-wife. Yeah. She's doing better than him now." Desmond slammed his office door harder than necessary. Cynthia, perched on his desk in a tight black dress, smirked. "You're letting gossip get to you? They think she's some genius designer," he muttered. "She just got lucky." But the truth gnawed at him. Every time Amara's name came up, it was followed by words like innovative and class. He found himself scrolling through her brand's growing social media page late at night, the images of her confident smile irritating and haunting him at the same time. It was a Thursday afternoon when Amara's phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. "Hello? Amara, it's Desmond." Her hand stilled over her sketchpad. "How did you get this number?" "I have my ways," he said lightly. "I just wanted to check on you. Maybe we could meet for coffee?" "Why?" she asked plainly. Pause. We were together a long time. I thought we could talk. Like old friends." "I'm busy," she replied, already moving to end the call. "Too busy for 10 minutes?" "Yes," she said flatly and hung up. Chioma, sitting across the table, raised an eyebrow. "That was him, wasn't it?" "Yes. And he's fishing. He thinks I have time to entertain his ego." "Good. Let him stew," Chioma said with a smirk. What Amara didn't know was that her refusal had already lit a spark of obsession in Desmond. 2 weeks later, Amara was in her store fitting a client when the glass door swung open with a bang. Cynthia stormed in, sunglasses pushed up on her head, her lips pressed into a thin, furious line. "Enjoying the attention, are you?" she snapped. Amara kept pinning the hem of the client's skirt. "Excuse me, we're in the middle of a fitting." I said, "Are you enjoying stealing my man's time?" The client glanced between them, wide-eyed. Chioma appeared from the back, folding her arms. "If you've come here to embarrass yourself, you're doing a great job." Cynthia stepped closer to Amara. "Stay away from Desmond. He's mine." Amara finally looked up, her expression calm but her words razor-sharp. "Desmond stopped being mine the day you took him. And he stopped being worth anything the day I realized losing him was my gain. So, you can have him." The room went dead silent. Cynthia's cheeks flushed crimson. Without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed out, the door slamming behind her. By that evening, the encounter was all over Lagos business circles, painted as Cynthia losing her composure while Amara handled her with class. The email arrived on a Monday morning. From Samuel E's CEO, Prime Retail Group. Subject: Proposal for collaboration. Amara read it twice. Prime Retail Group owns several luxury brands, one of which happened to be the parent company of Desmond's division. The proposal was clear. They wanted Amara to collaborate on a new corporate clothing line targeting upscale professionals. She would lead the creative design while their marketing and distribution teams handled the rest. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, and an unintentional direct challenge to Desmond. During the first meeting, Samuel shook her hand warmly. "We've been impressed by your work. We want fresh energy and you have it." Across the table, Desmond sat stiffly, clearly blindsided. "This is unexpected," he said tightly. Samuel smiled. "Competition drives results, Desmond. I'm sure you'll both rise to the occasion." Amara met Desmond's gaze, her expression unreadable. Inside she knew, this was no longer just about proving herself. This was about winning on every front. The boardroom was a sea of polished mahogany, leather chairs, and expectant faces. Amara sat at one end of the long table, her designs projected onto the screen behind her. At the opposite end sat Desmond, his team armed with a sleek but uninspired presentation. Samuel E's, the CEO, clasped his hands. "We'll hear both pitches today. Amara, you go first." Amara stood, her voice steady but commanding. "This line isn't just clothing, it's identity. It's confidence for the professional who wants to stand out while honoring African heritage." She clicked through slides of her pieces, tailored blazers lined with Ankara prints, dresses blending corporate elegance with bold patterns, fitted suits that turned heads without breaking dress codes. The room murmured with approval. One board member whispered, "This is fresh. This will sell." When Desmond's turn came, he launched into a technical pitch full of graphs and market analysis, but his designs lacked life. He noticed the distracted glances of the board members, their eyes drifting back to Amara's projected pieces. When both presentations ended, Samuel didn't waste time. "Amara's proposal aligns with our vision for the future. We'll proceed with her design." Desmond's jaw tightened. "With respect, sir, I believe." "This isn't personal, Desmond. It's business. And right now, her work outperforms yours." Amara gathered her files, her expression neutral. As she walked past him, she murmured, "I told you, you'd regret underestimating me." The weeks that followed were brutal for Desmond. The success of Amara's corporate line was immediate. Orders from top law firms, banks, and multinational companies flooded in. His own projects stalled. Clients who once requested him by name were now shifting to work with other divisions. Rumors began circulating that management was considering restructuring his department. At home, things weren't better. Cynthia had grown increasingly cold. "I didn't sign up to be with a man losing his shine," she snapped one evening after a charity gala where Amara had been the guest of honor. Desmond slammed his drink down. "Do you think this is easy for me? Watching her succeed while what?" Cynthia cut in. "While you fail. Maybe you should have kept her instead of chasing me." The words hit him harder than he expected. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. That night, he sat alone in the dark, scrolling through Amara's latest interviews. She spoke about resilience, self-belief, and building from nothing, without ever mentioning his name. Somehow, that silence was worse than public criticism. He realized he wasn't just losing his career. He was losing the image of himself he'd once believed was untouchable. It was a humid Friday afternoon when Amara's receptionist buzzed her. "There's a Mr. Desmond here to see you. Says it's urgent." Amara looked up from her sketches. "Send him in." Desmond entered, looking far from the polished man she once knew. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, and his eyes carried the weight of sleepless nights. "Amara," he began, voice softer than she remembered. I just wanted to talk." "About what?" she asked, leaning back in her chair. He sat down without invitation. "I've been thinking. About us. About everything. We made mistakes, both of us. I think, maybe we could start over." Amara tilted her head. "You left me, Desmond. Publicly humiliated me. Told me I was holding you back." "I was wrong," he said quickly. "I see that now. You've become incredible. I just want another chance." For a moment she simply studied him. Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope. "You're right. Things have changed. And so have the positions we hold." He frowned, taking the envelope. As he opened it, his eyes widened. It was his resignation letter, already typed, signed, and approved. "What is this?" he demanded. "You work for Prime Retail Group. I'm now the majority shareholder," she said evenly. "Your department falls under my authority. Effective today, you don't work here anymore." His face drained of color. You can't." "I can," she interrupted. "And I just did." The silence that followed was heavy, the balance of power completely reversed. For the first time, Desmond realized he had no control. The office felt unnaturally quiet. Even the distant hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade as Desmond stared at the resignation letter in his trembling hands. His name was printed neatly at the top, followed by the words that sealed his fate: effective immediately. He looked up at Amara, disbelief etched across his face. "This is a joke, right? Some power trip to prove a point?" Amara's gaze was steady, her tone calm but razor-sharp. "There's nothing to prove, Desmond. The work speaks for itself. This is simply closure." His jaw tightened. "Closure? I built my career here." "No," she said, leaning forward slightly. "You built your career on arrogance and you destroyed it with the same. The truth is, you underestimated people. You underestimated me." The words hung between them, heavy and unflinching. Desmond's eyes darted to the window as though searching for an escape. "Amara, we have history. Doesn't that count for anything?" She gave a faint, humorless smile. "It does. It counts as a lesson I'll never forget." His hands clenched around the paper. "You don't have to do this." Her voice didn't waver. "Yes, I do. Because keeping you here would mean compromising the standards I've worked to set. And I won't risk my company for anyone, especially not for someone who once told me I was holding them back." The silence stretched, broken only by the faint ticking of the wall clock. Desmond's eyes shifted to the letter again. The pen lay on the desk, perfectly aligned beside it, waiting. "You're really going to watch me sign this?" he asked bitterly. "I watched you hand me divorce papers without blinking," she replied evenly. "I think I can manage this." His face flushed, and for a moment he looked as if he might lash out. But instead his shoulders sagged. Slowly he reached for the pen. The scratch of ink against paper was almost deafening in the stillness. When he was done, he pushed the letter back across the desk, his signature looping at the bottom like a reluctant surrender. Amara picked it up, glanced at it briefly, then slid it into a folder without ceremony. "HR will process your benefits. Security will escort you out." He flinched. "Escort me?" "It's procedure," she said simply. I follow the rules, always. For a moment he just sat there, his hands resting uselessly on his knees. Then he stood, his movements stiff. You know, you've changed. Yes, she said, rising to her feet. That's called growth. He lingered by the door as if expecting her to call him back. But she didn't. She turned to her computer, typing as though he were already gone. Finally he muttered, "One day you'll look back and regret this." She didn't even look up. "The only thing I regret is wasting as much time as I did believing you were worthy of me." The words hit harder than anything she could have shouted. Desmond opened the door, only to find two uniformed security officers waiting outside. Their presence wasn't aggressive, but it was final. As they walked him through the open-plan office, heads turned. Conversations faltered. Desmond kept his eyes forward, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. Each step felt heavier than the last. When they reached the lobby, he paused for a moment, glancing back toward the glass doors of the executive floor. Once, that space had been his kingdom. Now it was enemy territory. Outside, the afternoon sun was blinding. He loosened his tie, but it did nothing to relieve the tightness in his chest. For the first time in years he felt small, stripped of the power and image he'd worn like armor. Meanwhile, upstairs, Amara closed the folder containing his resignation and placed it in the outbox. She didn't feel giddy or vindicated, just free. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about removing the last shadow of a past that had once tried to define her. Chioma stepped into the office, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Is it done?" Amara nodded. "It's done." Chioma grinned. "And how does it feel?" Amara leaned back in her chair, letting out a slow breath. "Like I've finally finished a book I should have closed years ago." They clinked their coffee cups together. "To new chapters," Chioma said. "To new chapters," Amara echoed. But even as they sipped, Amara's mind was already on the future. The expansion plans, the new investors, the flagship store opening. Desmond's exit wasn't the peak of her story. It was just a milestone on a much longer road. And this time she was the one writing every page. The late afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Amara's new flagship store in Victoria Island, casting warm light over rows of mannequins dressed in her signature designs. The grand opening had been a whirlwind. Investors, celebrities, journalists, and clients had poured in, the air buzzing with admiration. Amara stood at the center of it all, her emerald silk dress flowing around her, the gold accents at her cuffs catching the light with every gesture. This store wasn't just a business, it was a monument to the woman she had fought to become. As the final guests left and the soft murmur of the crowd faded, she took a quiet walk through the showroom. Her fingers brushed over the fabrics, each one a reminder of late nights, early mornings, and relentless determination. Chioma joined her, slipping off her heels with a groan. "My feet are screaming but my heart is dancing," she said, grinning. Amara laughed softly. "Worth every ache." Before they could retreat to the back office, the glass doors opened. A tall figure stepped in. Desmond. He wasn't in a suit this time, just a simple shirt and trousers. There was no confident swagger, no smug tilt of his head. His eyes scanned the store, lingering on the displays, the gold-lettered Amara Johnson sign on the wall, the photos from her magazine features framed in glass. "This is yours?" he said quietly. Amara turned fully toward him. "Yes. Every inch of it." He stepped closer, his voice low. "I came to say, I'm sorry." She tilted her head, studying him. "Sorry for leaving? For humiliating me? For telling me I was holding you back? Or sorry that it didn't break me?" His jaw worked as though the words were caught. "All of it." She folded her arms. "And what do you expect me to do with that?" "I don't know. Maybe just hear me out. We were young and I was selfish. I thought I knew what I wanted. I didn't." He took a breath. "You've become more than I ever imagined. I suppose a part of me thought, maybe, there's still a chance for us." Amara's lips curved into a small, almost pitying smile. "A chance? Desmond, there's no us left to save. You didn't just leave me, you cleared the path for me to become who I was meant to be." He looked down, his voice almost a whisper. "And there's no way back?" "No," she said firmly. "Because the woman I am now would never choose the man you were then. And the man you are now still isn't enough for me." For a long moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the faint hum of the store's air conditioning. Finally Desmond nodded, his shoulders slumping. "I guess this is goodbye," he said. "It's been goodbye for a long time," Amara replied. He turned toward the door. The sound of it closing behind him felt like the final page of a chapter. Amara exhaled slowly, her body lighter than it had been in years. Chioma peeked out from behind a display rack, eyebrows raised. Was that who I think it was? Yes, Amara said, walking toward the back office. And it was the last time. They sat together at her desk, going over the final figures from the opening. Sales had exceeded expectations and new partnership offers were already in her inbox. Chioma grinned. You could have given him a tour. Shown him the storage room, the cash registers, the customer queue, just to make him see exactly what he lost. Amara shook her head with a soft laugh. He saw enough. The truth is this, she gestured around the office, the store, the brand, isn't about proving anything to him anymore. It's about proving everything to myself. They clinked glasses of champagne as the evening light faded, the city skyline glowing through the windows. Later, as Amara locked up the store, she paused to look at the sign one more time. Amara Johnson. It wasn't just a name. It was a story of betrayal turned into strength, of dismissal turned into dominance, of a woman who had been told she was holding someone back, only to discover she was the one destined to lead. She walked to her car, the cool night air brushing her face. Her driver opened the door, and as she slid into the seat, she caught her reflection in the tinted glass. There was no trace of the woman who had once sat at a candlelit dinner waiting for a man who would throw her away. This woman, the one in the emerald dress, the one with her own company, her own name, her own power, was untouchable. As the car pulled away, the city lights reflecting in her eyes, Amara smiled to herself. She hadn't just survived. She had built an empire. And she would never, ever hand over the keys to it again. Liked it? Thumbs up, subscribe and join the AfriHeart fam. Your support fuels our stories. Until next time.